All right. So I think I live streaming over Zoom is a new thing for me. So forgive me, y'all, watching on Facebook. Welcome to the very first panel discussion from the Lived Experience Storytellers Collective. If you've seen me on live streaming before, you would know who I am. I'm Chris J. I am the host of the Coffee with Chris show, and all those other, wacky, crazy things that I have done around the community over the last few years. We have pulled together a fantastic panel of people to talk about the Trans Health Equity Act that's happening right now in Annapolis. So I am going to tell you a little bit about the Lived Experience Storytellers Collective, and then I will introduce the panel to y'all. So, you know, get ready for whatever all this is. So the Lived Experience Storytellers Collective is kind of like this dreamed up kind of collection of lived experience storytellers and the ability to try to archive these stories and oral histories and all of that to a place where we can use these resources for academic purposes. The biggest catalyst for creating this collective is the threat of our histories being lost through all of these different bills and acts that are being passed around the country to chalk Black history, especially up to critical race theory, which has been turned into something beyond what it actually is. So the purpose of this collection is to make sure that not only are we preserving our history, but we're collecting history from the people who are living in it. So this is the Lived Experience Storytellers Collective. Please feel free to go check out our website. It is bare bones, but it's there. If you want to find out a little bit more about us, it's lecollective.org. And I'll tell you a little bit more about things that we're doing and how you can help towards the end of this panel discussion. So I would love to introduce our amazing panel tonight. Let me get into my notes because, you know, if y'all know me, you know. Well, first off, let me introduce Randall Leonard, who is a member of the collective, one of the founders and um, gosh, uh, one of the founders and board members of the LESC. Um, and I am going down to where I have your written bio, Randall. So just give me a second here.
No worries, Chris. We all storytellers, and I know how that is.
So, Randall is a proud Black non-binary clinical social worker and community healer, serving communities across the nation directly from Baltimore. They currently hold healing space focused on the liberation of Black people through encouraging authenticity, reconnecting to history and lineage, and empowering shared lived experiences. They also provide consultation for professionals and organizations on care for queer folks, polyamorous relationships, counseling, and supporting kink and sexual healing. Randall loves their queer, poly, pansexual identity and enjoys sharing their perspectives in hopes of having more spaces that serves their community. The recent achievements include testifying for the X gender marker on the Maryland's driver's license enacted in 2019 and being featured as part of Sephora's 2019 Belong to Something Beautiful gender diversity campaign. That is Randall. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Chris. I love hearing you read that too. Your voice is perfect for that. Your voice is perfect for that.
That's why I guess that's why people are here.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Actually, Randall, thank you for helping put this all together. So that like all of this, I completely credit Randall for getting this all in gear. So thank you so much. Our next panel member, Mariah. Mariah is a proud Black transgender woman raised in the Maryland area. She is classically trained violinist. Yes, who started playing at 9 years old. Proud leader of queer community during her college career, Mariah values community building and creating spaces that are welcoming to Black transgender people. Her accomplishments include acting as the president of In the Life at Towson University, a student group for LGBT people of color to come together, share stories, and support one another. While acting in that role, Mariah had the chance to introduce Lorraine Cox as a guest speaker for university-sponsored events. Mariah finds her life valuable and loves who she is. She's always willing to share public platforms to advocate for the rights of transgender people to authentically be themselves. In her free time, Mariah enjoys studying Japanese, drawing, and singing her idol, Mariah Carey. Mariah, welcome to the panel.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Next up, we have Deb Dunn, Deb Dunn, PAC MBA, yes, is a family practice physician assistant and the trans health coordinator of the LGBTQ Center of Equality for Chase Braxton Healthcare. In addition to graduating from Howard University Physician Assistant Program in 1983, she holds an MBA from Johns Hopkins University. In her position at Chase Braxton, she provides leadership and coordination of care for transgender identified patients, establishes best practices for medical transgender care, trains the other medical providers, provides consultation to external organizations on transgender related issues, including employee transition, engages in advocacy at the state level, and identifies research and funding opportunities related to transgender care. She also was a part of the team that wrote Gender Joy, Journey of Youth, and a multidisciplinary program written for transgender diverse youth, adolescents, and families since its launch had 900 patients. She has spoken at several national conferences and is involved with several other organizations in the nation who writes guidelines for the treatment of transgender children and adults. She was awarded Physician Assistant of the Year by Maryland Academy of Physicians in 2018, Physician Assistant of the Year by Daily Records in 2021, Healthcare Hero Award by National Association of Clinics Healthcare in 2018, and she serves on the Maryland Board of Physicians, Physician Assistant Advisory, and the American Academy of Physician Assistants, selected for the state of Maryland's first LGBTQ commission for Larry Hogan. Welcome, Deb Dunn. Yes. Our next panel member is Dr. Sydney Lewis. Sydney Lewis, PhD, is a lecturer in the University of Maryland's Women's Studies. She received her doctorate in 2012 from the University of Washington English Department. Baltimore area native, Sydney Lewis received her BA in English and Psychology from the UMBC Honors College, where she was a recipient of the Humanities Scholars Fellowship. She earned her master's degree from the University of California, Santa Cruz in the History of Consciousness program, continuing a history of interdisciplinary work. Lewis pioneered innovative courses at the University of Washington, Bothell, including courses exploring representations of race and gender, boundary crossing, and a popular course on burlesque history, performance, and feminism. She is currently working on projects exploring Black femme subjectivity, drag, and sex work. Welcome, Sydney. Our next person, Erin Maxwell, is a licensed master social worker, currently working as a therapist case manager for healthcare for the homeless on Falls Way. They have previously worked as the trans care navigator for Chase Braxton Healthcare, addressing health inequalities and systematic barriers for trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming folks, and have extensive clinical experience serving the LGBTQ plus community. Erin, welcome. Oh, I really enjoyed reading all your bios. That was y'all are whoo,
That was cool.
y'all. If you're watching this, you have no idea. This is it right here. So let's just jump right into to the questions if y'all are ready. So we're gonna start with what exactly is going on in Annapolis and who can best describe, or how can we best describe to people who are watching what this bill entails or what's at stake right now.
I'll even jump in from that, Chris. First of all, even just right out of the gate for the Trans Health Equity Act for 2022, really want to thank Senator Mary Washington and her co-sponsors, and also Delegate Ann Kaiser for sponsoring these bills. Highly important bills, restructuring how trans people get care in the state of Maryland. And I think it's really important to focus on because we had this moment. The bills have been introduced. They passed from those introductions, and now they're going into committee. And we want to be able to raise awareness about the needs of trans individuals, and many of which are served by Maryland Medicaid and the Medicaid system, the medical system, insurance system in the state. We want to let those delegates and representatives know that we need assistance as providers to allow access for people to get the care that they need. And, I get choked up a little bit whenever I start thinking about like the fact that we do have these bills that are here, especially because just like you said, there's so many bills around the country that are heading in the opposite direction and want to take our rights away from us, both as trans people and as Black people too, as far as I'm concerned. So the whole point of this bill, and I love it, in its simplicity, I'm just going to read the synopsis of it, but the Maryland Medicaid Assistance Program to provide gender affirming treatment and prohibiting the program from basically issuing an adverse benefit or denying related gender affirming treatment unless a healthcare provider with experience prescribing or delivering gender affirming treatment has reviewed and confirmed the appropriateness of the determination. So the whole point, once again, is to allow healthcare providers to provide the care that we do for the people that we serve. I get specifically the letters behind my name so I can serve these people and to serve my community. And to get a little bit away from having places and barriers just get in the way and take healthcare rights from people. Quick synopsis, but yeah.
All right, great. And before we continue, I wanted to also quickly introduce Stephanie, who is down there. Stephanie is a part of the LESC collective, and if you are commenting on Facebook, she is the one that you will be interacting with. So thank you, Stephanie, for coming in to moderate the chat for us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Chris.
Yes. All right. Well, our next question is, how important is it for trans people to have access to all gender affirming medical procedures?
As a medical provider who, for the last 15 years, have had trans patient, non-binary, gender diverse people, I've seen thousands of times how it's improved the quality of the life. It allows my patients to be able to walk in their truth authentically as their self. There's so many people just living in social phobia, not able to be interactive or in social relationships without these very medically needed procedures. So it is essential that laws like this pass. There is nowhere else where there's these kind of barriers to surgeries. No one else has to have behavioral health letters. No one else has to have these weight specifications. No one else has laws that prevent healthcare equality.
Anyone else?
to add, right now, Maryland Medicaid currently excludes 31 gender affirming treatments that they deem elective, cosmetic, or medically unnecessary, which I have a big challenge with. A lot of the clients I have had come in for surgical letters are pursuing electrolysis, either in relation to bottom surgery, where it is actually a surgical requirement so that you don't develop an infection later on. So that can therefore jeopardize outcomes. But facial feminization and masculinization, because walking through the world, I have had numerous clients report, I get clocked all the time. All I want to do is be myself, but every time I look in the mirror, I see a complete stranger. And other folks, cis folks don't necessarily have to worry about it. They don't need to worry about whether their gender identity conforms with their gender expression, and if that will impact whether they experience discrimination at a job, with housing, and perhaps physical violence, all of which our trans community experiences at exceptionally high rates.
And I want to say, like, it is a matter of safety in general, because not only do we have to worry about being clocked on the street, like people can potentially come and attack us, we also have to figure out on our own how to get these procedures done for ourselves. So some people, like, go to the streets to make their money, and that puts us at an even higher risk of being murdered, which is, Black trans women are at a very, very high risk of being murdered in general in this country. So if we had a means to be able to get these life-saving procedures and treatments done without having to put ourselves out there like that, then it would just make it that much easier. And for instance, for me, I had to get my laser hair removal, I had to get a job so I can at a med spa so that I can get the procedures done for free. But I shouldn't have had to do that just to be myself and walk around the street and not have a beard, and all of it is just a matter of safety for us.
Mm. Yeah.
Also,
Yeah. No. Yeah.
yeah, all of these, I mean, it's just, oh, man, Deb, Mariah, and Aaron, like, it just really just makes me think, and it just really brings that point home, because there's a difference between, even Mariah, there's that difference between so many of us. We want to work, we want to be productive individuals in this society, we really do, and many of us are just like, I don't feel safe with going outside, I don't feel safe with going anywhere. And there's so many just moments where people should be able to get a job in what they want to do specifically, and not necessarily to focus on, okay, I need this in order to be safe, in order to go out here and be able to get another job. And I think that's what so much of this comes back to, especially when we start blocking, just the simple task of being able to go in. I'm a master's level clinician, and for some of these procedures, there may be a doctorate level letter that is necessary as well. So for many of these procedures, you need 2 letters, one from a master's level individual, one from a doctoral level individual. And that means individuals are coming out multiple times into these healthcare settings, having multiple sessions on the behavioral health side, just to be able to do something that they should self-attest, basically say that, you know what, I know what my gender is, and this is what I need in order to be a productive citizen in the state and to give back to the state, like so many of us want to do.
Right. So I'm gonna, I know I've sent y'all questions ahead of time, but I'm gonna skip around a little bit. But how do we feel, or how do you feel about the restrictiveness of medical access, or the level of bureaucracy, I guess, or hoops that you have to go through to get these to get access to these necessary medical procedures? Like, how do we feel about how these mostly affect BIPOC communities, and how much harmful is this, does this actually make it for BIPOC trans communities?
It's quite suffocating because like you have to plan out your whole trajectory, and it could take years to even get to the basics of where you need to be, because you have to, as Randall mentioned, you have to get all these letters and get them approved and then get them sent to the places to the clinics and surgical centers that you are trying to go to, and it may or may not be accepted, and it's just all these like juggling and hoops that we have to get through. And as Black people, we're already discriminated against by being Black in ourselves, by our names, by our culture. And so when you add being trans on top of that, it's just that much harder, because they might bypass our Black name, and then when they see us and they see that we may have a little bit of stubble or whatever, what have you, we can be denied jobs for whatever kind of reason. And it's just like you have to plan, and then you also have to find a job that's going to accept you as a trans person. Like you have to find out what jobs are trans friendly, and there's just so many things to do that a lot of cisgender people don't have to worry about, and cisgender and non-Black people have to worry about, and it's suffocating. Like we shouldn't have to go through all these gymnastics just to be ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm just to like jump in and add, I mostly, when I do moderation, I try not to bring my opinions into it, but here I am as a Black trans person talking about this as well. Finding the, I don't know, I'll put it like this. I don't know if anybody who has ever gotten a speeding ticket. You've ever gotten a speeding ticket and then you can't afford to pay for the speeding ticket. So then you got to go to court. But then you got to take off of work to go to court. And then you got to hope that they either let the speeding ticket go, or if they don't, you might have to pay the ticket and court fees. And then if you don't pay for that, it trickles down to you might get your license suspended. And then if you can't get your license suspended, then you can't drive to work anymore. And if you can't drive to work, then you have to figure out how you're going to catch a bus or public transportation to get to work. And it's like that kind of these roadblocks that just completely suffocate Black and people of color communities, especially poor Black people of color communities, is just absolutely atrocious. And for when you lose the ability for the healthcare that is given to every American now, right? Like this is Medicaid, this is like Obamacare, whatever you want to call it. We have the ability to get this healthcare, which is hard enough. And if you have any kind of mental health issue, that was the worst, most painful application process I've ever experienced in my life. And to be able to go get that kind of care and the hoops you have to go through is just completely disproportionately harmful for Black folks and people of color. I can just speak for myself and my own, experience and body. But something like this is like, it's not even a complete game changer. To have this pass is not even a complete game changer, but it is a step in the right direction to make sure that the access is there for our communities. And it is just more harmful for us to exist and then exist with extra things. It's just incredibly terrifying to continually put roadblocks in our way to just be ourselves and to just live our lives. Sometimes I just want to be an old man and go play the numbers. I don't want to have to deal with all of this extra stuff in order to just exist in the world. Anyone else like to?
Yeah, extra stuff that other people don't necessarily have to deal with. And, if anything, to your point and to everyone's point here, whenever there is a barrier, a social barrier, the most affected is going to be the most marginalized within the society. That's just always the way that it happens. For every time that somebody's just like, okay, well, I can worry about this tomorrow, it is going to affect the most marginalized person in the society. And especially, with COVID and after that, when the midst of all of this, healthcare really took a beating. A lot of people in healthcare just were experiencing a lot of hardships as well. And sometimes, unfortunately, for many of these individuals, it comes down to a fax machine. Sometimes the fax doesn't get over if a letter is being faxed to a clinician and that fax doesn't get over, and then people have to call people back, and then a couple of days just kind of passes. And when those things happen, it could be days or months before somebody can be scheduled for a procedure. And which brings us back to, why are there so many hands in the pot? Why do trans people have to keep coming to medical providers to let them know about who they are, that they've known for much of their life? And if anything, it can also be a little bit more cost effective, because somebody have to go to a master's level person and then a doctorate level person and then going to get an assessment from a surgeon. That whole process, it does cost the system, and it does cost Medicaid money. Whereas, it can be, if a surgeon says for themselves that, what, I deem this this surgery to be necessary, and a psych individual is just like, this person is completely good to be able to make a medical decision for themselves, that cuts out a bunch of barriers, not only for that medical system, but also for the most marginalized in our society as well.
This is, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to add to that, Randall. What we also know is that when we remove barriers for the most marginalized, we remove barriers for everyone. And so aiming for folks who are the most marginalized, who are impacted by multiple forms of oppression, essentially helps everyone out, in addition to just the basic economics of costs that you were bringing up.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that goes right into my next question, is that how does this access uplift and improve communities? We had to sit on that one for a second.
Well, you use the word uplift, so we're trying to get to the place where the uplift comes.
I understand.
That's like the struggle. When you say, how does it uplift the community? Well, I think that I agree with everything that Randall and Sydney just said. It's about the marginalization, it's the disproportionate number of people with the social determinants of health, just like we saw with COVID. It's always that marginalized group of people. And I'm talking about educated people too. I'm not talking about uneducated people. I'm talking about people who go in with college degrees, that their credit looks perfect, their background checks are perfect, but because of the stigma and discrimination from the people who have the power to give them jobs or homes and things like that, they're turned down. Somewhere we got to create laws to protect human rights for people. We got to create laws that will stop that kind of stuff from happening. Absolutely. One of the things though that's uplifting for me, that I go home every day and learn, is that you have to be resilient. We are everybody in the LGBTQ community, especially trans and non-binary, are very resilient, and I see them advocating for themselves. That uplifts me, that gives me hope. And we need more allies and advocates and people with lived experience to really get on the bandwagon and go down to Annapolis and try to center yourself. But I do see an uplifting. I see more people getting involved. I see more people trying to help us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And even to add to that, just when I think about uplifting, and it brings me always back to this concept of liberation. And one of the things that Shauna Marie Brown and others have said is that freedom is individual and liberation is a collective. And when I see, even as I'm looking around this room and when I see my communities, there's just so much collective efforts. The fact that there are more trans people that are standing up and recognizing what is happening in these state legislations, still mispronounced it, and going out and actually just being able to advocate for themselves. And so, you know, what is uplifting for me is the fact that these delegates and senators can hear directly from us about our needs, because what we see time and time and time again is that if you don't have somebody with that lived experience that understands innately, it's more than just empathizing with somebody else. It is also walking that walk yourself. It's easy for somebody to just be like, wait a minute, this isn't some of the things that we're talking about cosmetic, without really necessarily understanding the safety risk of somebody just walking outside their door, just wanting to go to work, just wanting to go get food for themselves. And so a big part of this, you know, when we're talking about uplifting, is liberating our communities to be able to empower and push for ourselves. And I also want to point out, and Deb, you mentioned that term ally. I see pretty often too this whole scope of, well, I'm just going to speak for myself as a trans person, as a provider in this community too. There's that squeeze from both sides. I'm both trying to protect my community and oftentimes tokenized in many of these places, and trying to, you know, push my value and my worth in those places too. And it's a squeezing that happens in the middle. And so there are times where I'm tired. I'm tired of yelling. I'm tired of screaming. I'm tired. I'm tired. And so for those people that do call themselves allies, you have this moment for a trans person to be like, yo, I'm tired right now. Can you please share this? Can you please put your name in this letter and just email a senator for me, or just email somebody? And so if you are going to call yourself an ally, when you are asked to do something for somebody who is pushing and pushing and pushing and tired, come through, understand the assignment, come through.
Yeah. And as I, continue to ask questions to the panel, for anyone watching, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. So we can also address any questions that you might have, or and thoughts or whatever. Please feel free to join into this conversation, and participate and express how you're feeling while you're watching. So what can community members do? Like we were talking about allyship and things like that. Well, what can community members do to continue to advocate for this? And to continue to advocate for better healthcare, and continue to advocate for not only themselves, but for other, for community members that might be more marginalized than themselves.
I think, like Randall was saying, it goes beyond what I call performative allyship, when you show up when it's convenient, or to get a couple of likes on social media and then remain silent, and not respecting that this problem doesn't just end because, at Trans Day of Remembrance. It doesn't. This is a continuous fight, and allyship is a continuous, perpetual effort. That, then that becomes just like a privilege, that a convenience, that you can step away when you want to, but we can't, because this is our lives. Like we have to be there, but we're tired. Randall speaks so much to what I feel a lot of the time, is tired of not just being tokenized, but being the one to educate other folks when they can also educate themselves and make the effort to educate themselves. Reach out to your legislators, show up to the marches, and again, just provide ongoing active support.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to talk about what that looks like?
I can tell you from me, I identify as LGBT, but not T. And so every day I acknowledge that I do not know what it's like to walk in the steps of a transgender person, a transgender mother, a parent, spouse, child. And so there's value to voice. And the only way you're really gonna get to hear that what the need is by asking the people who are living the truth. And for me, I spent almost my lifetime trying to help and make a difference and writing letters that I said, finally, I got to do something about this. So I'm on the Maryland Board of Physicians. Hopefully one day I can impact the doctors and make them mandate teaching transgender care and medical curriculums and mental health. And I'm getting ready to be sworn in as a commissioner for the state of Maryland for the first LGBTQ commission. And I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to say, I represent you. And now I feel positioned that I can go back and talk to the people that I need to talk to implement laws and policy. It is like the places of worship just sometimes get on my nerves because they think it's just the 2 hours you're in church and maybe we feed you. But okay, let's get out in the street. Let's do some legislation stuff. You know, let's go where the help really is. But that's, for me personally, that's what I've done to try to really help make an impact for the people. Because I got so tired of seeing my patients suffering and struggling and being murdered and just having to go the 100th mile in order to make it like 5 steps.
Mm.
Yeah. And Debbie, even when you brought up like the churches and these places of worship, which are, many of them are supportive, and many of them too, many of us have been sometimes traumatized by experiences of what many of them have either placed on us or what they say of us. And, you know, Aaron, you make a really, really good point too. I sit here sometimes and I'm wondering, what motivates me and why do I keep? And I think that oftentimes, like, conflict just seems to continue. I've been listening more and more to, again, over and over and over again, civil rights leaders, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King speeches, and just listening to them. And I've heard them, you know, so many times, but then when I listen to them today, it seems like they could literally be talking about the same thing right now in this moment. And that shows me that, you know, for many of us, like, it's just your step right now in this time period, but the conflict does seem to continue. And that doesn't mean that there aren't moments where we win, because there are so many moments where we win. And there are things that, you know, if we rest for too long, just like the attack on abortion rights right now, everything just, you know, at some point there's a chance that it can come down on the other side. So for me, it's not even about like focusing on that conflict. For me, it is, you know what, I'm going to align myself with my values, and I am going to do what I feel is right in the midst of whatever that we're in. And so my values tell me to align with my community. My values tell me to just keep on moving. My values tell me to open doors for other people to come in. And I think what others can do in order to really, you know, focus on a lot of what we're talking about tonight, to my lovely wife, Stephanie, I sent something. Hopefully there's so many organizations out here like Trans Maryland, for instance. They specifically, and hopefully we can go ahead and put that in the chat, specifically adding where you can, a link to where you can just go ahead and send a letter in to representatives. So yeah, thank you, Aaron. And also we'll put the exact page out there for the Medicaid, so you can just literally just either download the flyer, you can send it to your family member.
Not to cut you off, Randall, but I did share the Trans Maryland link for the letter on our Facebook already, because I did it. So if you want to go to our the LESC Facebook page, you can see that.
Yes. Thank you, because those are definitely the things that people need to see. And again, if you don't necessarily have the space yourself, like sending out to other people too. And those are the things that we can definitely do to help this.
Yes.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Steph.
So I gotta talk about I guess the term is devil's advocate, right? So what is actually some of the opposition that we're hearing about these, not even just specifically this this bill, but some other you know, anti-trans bills that are happening around the country? There's a lot of conversation. It always comes back to sports for some reason, and I'm not even going to go there. I've had that conversation. If you want to see that rant, you can check out Coffee with Chris. I've had that already. So it always, you know, but as far as a bill like this, as far as like healthcare access, what is some of the opposition that you've heard that is just completely false, pretty much?
A lot of times I hear like elective and cosmetic, like kind of procedures and stuff like that, but it's not just elective and it's not just cosmetic, it's life-saving. It is important for us to be able to live how we would like to be. So like, for instance, like they compare some of the procedures to like cisgender people, like getting breast augmentation. Like I understand for some people, some cis people, it's important, you know, they want to have bigger breasts, but for a trans woman, like we're flat chested. Like the progesterone only does so much. And so it's for us, it's not just cosmetic. Like they're looking at it at the lens of what they assume. And by doing that and not actively talking to a trans person to see what they need, what we need, they're just, and it's the same thing with, as Randall mentioned, like the abortion. Like people are just coming to conclusions and not actually talking or doing any kind of research. And because of that, we're all suffering for it. And that's really dangerous. I lost my train of thought, but that's somewhere around that line.
Well, in Texas, and soon 12 other states, they passed a law that children can not be medically transitioned. And if you know, like I know, we have over 900 transgender children and youth, and I know the impact it's made on their life. Like earlier, that they start the transition process from puberty blockers up, the more successful, the happier, the more quality of life. Not in the hospital with depression and suicidal ideations. And it just scares me to death of what's gonna happen to the children. And if the parents get help for them, they will be charged with child abuse. So, you know, even if I'm thinking about trying to get a Texas license so I can do telemedicine, but the parents will go to jail for child abuse.
Yeah, I believe, and I think it's Idaho. Yeah, Idaho passed a law against any help. If you help your child with transitioning early, you could go to jail for life.
Oh yeah,
For life.
it's 12 different states that are getting ready to pass it.
That is absolutely absurd. And
Yes.
let's also talk about mental health around you know, gender affirming procedures and surgery and medical care. And you know, I've, you know, being a part of this community myself, seen so many you know, especially trans masculine trans men who've gotten any kind of surgeries. Like you can see their entire world change. You'll see a completely different person, someone who feels elated and free of themselves. And I know, being non-binary but also taking testosterone, that I feel more like myself, and more I can access actually more parts of me, and I'm able to actually do more work as far as my mental health is concerned, because that hurdle, that part of that, you know, the parts of us that kind of feels lost in identity kind of fades away. So anyone have any comments or you know, or anything to share about mental health, you know, around getting these kind of procedures and having access?
So trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming folks already experience mental health and substance use issues at a far higher rate than cisgender folks. And having access to gender affirming care improves mental health numerously. And that's studies show that from like the APA, even though that was a population in Sweden, that still counts for something. That still matters. I know that like there's a lot of when arguments come up about like, well, what about surgical regret? And then you have the folks who want to detransition. The folks who are citing those studies are not reading them correctly. That is a tiny percentage, and regret is usually around the surgery getting screwed up in some sort of way. It has nothing to do with the person necessarily regretting that, oh, I have had my gender affirmation surgery, but I no longer, identify this way or can identify this way. More often than not, what happens is that when you feel affirmed in your body and in the body that you want to be, the benefits, everything is just, it's numerous. Like, can sleep at night, can walk in spaces without having to worry about severe anxiety and depression or panic attacks. And for folks like with a history of trauma, that's everything. Yeah, that's everything.
I could weirdly change gears really quick. I was just thinking about Sydney was telling me a couple days ago that like we talk about healthcare for trans individuals as something that's like novel and new. Sydney, do you have a moment to kind of share some of the background on trans healthcare that has happened since around like before the Second World War?
Yeah, what we were talking about the other day is how a sexologist, Magnus Hirschfeld, was basically persecuted in Nazi Germany related to being Jewish, and also his work around trans healthcare. And he had a vast library of studies and work, mostly around trans women, and especially for the time, very gender affirming, and was promoting gender affirming healthcare, was promoting removing transgender from any kind of like DSM classification or any kind of like psychiatric illness and all of that. And his vast library of work was burnt by the Nazis, and he was forced to flee. And so our knowledge of trans healthcare is actually behind, not because of this being particularly like new or trans people being new or anything like that, but because a huge library was burnt during in Nazi Germany.
Wow, thank you. And that just, I mean, I'm hearing every time y'all talk, I'm like, oh, hold on. These little sparks fly for me because I'm just like, we do talk about this, like this is something that's just like brand new. This is 2022. We all are just showing up to this. And it's like, no, and that's just, what happened before the Second World War. And the studies that have, people who have tried to do this work ever since then. And we're finally at a place where we can have this conversation as publicly as we can. I'm glad that we're able to be here, and being a part of this part of history, and be able to speak our truths. If y'all are ready, I have a question from the audience. We have, does anyone know where the VA is with gender affirming healthcare?
That one's a good question.
I have a lot of patients that come from the VA, and they pay out of pocket because we don't take TRICARE. And I've talked to the providers, the medical directors over at the VA, and there's very little interest in providing trans care. Well, I'm talking about the ones local. I don't know about the nation, but the benefits are excellent. They cover almost all of the gender affirmation surgeries. So the benefits are great. The employee benefits are awesome, but there's just not enough people to really take care of the patients.
Oh, okay.
Problem. So I'm just speaking basically DC, Virginia, and Maryland.
So another access issue is what you're saying, Don. Yeah, and
Mhm.
it just there's so many. Wow, it just even just thinking about what everybody was saying too. And in terms of just like with both the VA and I had these times too where people, that we're serving are just like, what's Medicare, what's Medicaid, all of these. I mean, even knowledge about these systems and which one would actually be able to look out for me. It's just huge. And even thinking about that question earlier about mental health, this whole scope of for us of just everybody thinks that transgender is, like you said, brand new, but we have literally been here forever. There has been many, 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 many cultures across the world that have recognized trans identities. We've literally been here forever. Trans people have been here forever. Intersex people have been here forever. Sexual orientation of all the different types have been here forever. And so, we're pretty consistently trying to come back. And I think this is why it's really important too that, we're sitting here looking at the Lived Experience Storytellers Collective, because it gets into, Aaron and Sydney, what you're always saying about like, studies. And a lot of times these studies don't necessarily represent us. A lot of times, and these studies don't represent many people that are in the Baltimore area. And we have people now, saying like, come out and, for Black trans individuals, come out and be a part of these studies. But also there's just so much, again, all of those intersectional issues in arriving at a place so you can even be a part of a study. So there's an underrepresentation of us in many of these spaces too. And so it's really important for us to have this collective to be able to share these experiences. And in terms of mental health too, when y'all were talking about that, I was just talking to somebody this week and they just kind of looked off for a moment, and wonderful person. And then all of a sudden they just like, I just realized that I'm not gonna hate myself this summer because I had access to this surgery. I'm not gonna hate myself. I can actually go out here and do some things. And that for me, that was like my everything. This is why I serve, because you can actively see people just get better and feel better in these spaces too. And I hope that question from somebody for that VA, I hope that, thank you for asking it too. And I hope that we can all just continue to push too for having good access care on that side too.
So we are towards the end of our hour. And just wanted to give everyone an opportunity to say any last thoughts.
Please come out and help support that bill. It's very, very important. Very important.
All right. So everyone watching, thank you so much for joining us for our very first panel discussion here for the Lived Experience Storytellers Collective. We are incorporated, but we are working towards our 501c3 now. And we need your help. So if you would like to donate to us, you can go to lecollective.org and hit the donate button, and you can donate however much you would like to help us out as we move forward to build this collective. Every little bit helps. And we plan on doing these panel discussions at least hopefully monthly, and continue to bring these conversations and share our experiences with you, and making sure that we record our history and be able to speak our truths and be here for whatever comes next for us. But we are going to at least show up in the present. Thank you all, to all my panel members. Thank you so much for taking the time out tonight to talk about this very important issue. Please get out and contact your representatives. Check out the Trans Health Care Equality Act. It's available if you go on the interwebs. You can find it and read it. Participate. Be a part of the advocacy for the necessities of these bills that are really what we're experiencing in Maryland is one thing, but like it is getting kind of crazy out there. So please keep your ear to the ground for what's happening. Because if you don't, next thing you know, Idaho happens. And then that is just completely insane. I don't even understand how we slipped so far. So please pay attention, be involved. And again, if you would love to donate to the collective, please go to lecollective.org and hit that donate button. We can use all the help that you can give. Until next time, we will see you soon. Thank you so much. Thank you, panel members. I hope you all have a fantastic evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
also.
you very much for this.
Thank you.
Really, really want to thank too Senator Mary Washington and Delegate Ann Kaiser. Thank you so much for seeing us. Thank you. And all the sponsors in Maryland to Annapolis. Thank you for seeing us. We see you. And thank you, Chris.
Hold on, I'm gonna